Our first meeting was incidental, a brief encounter during a routine staff briefing. She, 32 years old and exuding a collegiate charm, was a stark contrast to the usual staff. There was an air of academia about her, a lingering aura of her recent college days. It was intriguing how she seamlessly transitioned from the world of academia into our corporate microcosm. As her mentor, I found myself in a role that was as new to me as the job was to her. Guiding her through the labyrinth of office politics and procedural nuances was a responsibility I took seriously. Our interactions were initially professional, marked by a mutual respect and an ever-growing appreciation of each other's skills and qualities. But as time marched on, those meetings at the office began to take on a different hue. We discovered shared interests, a similar sense of humor, and an easy camaraderie that extended beyond the walls of I-35. Coffee breaks became longer, and work discussions seamlessly transitioned into personal conversations. I learned about her college days, her adventures, and her dreams. She was a vibrant tapestry of experiences and aspirations. Meanwhile, my life outside of work was a quiet routine, marked by the usual social gatherings and a small circle of friends. Her entrance into my life brought a refreshing change, a new perspective that challenged and intrigued me. I found myself looking forward to our interactions, anticipating the bright smile and the intelligent conversation that awaited me each day at work. Our bond strengthened over shared projects and work challenges. There was a sense of teamwork that went beyond the usual colleague camaraderie. We celebrated small victories together and supported each other through the inevitable setbacks. It was during one such celebration, a simple dinner after a successful project completion, that I realized the depth of my feelings for her. The realization came as a gentle wave, not a sudden jolt. It was an understanding that what we had was special, unique in its form and essence. The friendship that had blossomed in the confines of I-35 had unknowingly paved the way for something deeper, something more profound. As months turned into a year, our relationship evolved, cautiously at first, as we navigated the delicate balance between professional and personal. But the heart knows no bounds, and our connection deepened, unfettered by the constraints of office walls. We found solace, understanding, and a deep-seated respect for each other. Our story truly began in those early days at I-35, in the midst of mundane routines and office chatter. Little did we know that those initial innocent interactions would lay the foundation for a journey that would test us in ways we never imagined. It was a beginning that was humble yet significant, marking the start of a shared path filled with love, challenges, and the intertwining of two lives in a bond that would eventually face the ultimate test. My wife, who had since transitioned from a carefree student to a responsible adult, was taken aback by her friend's sudden reappearance. The news of her friend's engagement was as surprising as it was unsettling. It stirred in my wife a complex mixture of emotions: joy for her friend's happiness, nostalgia for their shared past, and an underlying sense of disbelief. How had the wild spirit she once knew, the partner in countless college escapades, decided to settle down? As the friend rekindled her relationship with my wife, I observed a subtle change in her. There was a renewed vigor, a spark that I hadn't seen since our early days at I-35. She recounted tales of their college adventures with a twinkle in her eye, painting vivid pictures of their youthful exploits. It was a window into a part of her life I had only heard about in fragments, a life filled with freedom and reckless abandon. Despite her initial reservations, my wife found herself drawn back into the orbit of her college friend. The promise of revisiting her youth, even if just vicariously through her friend's engagement celebrations, was enticing. It was a chance to momentarily step away from the responsibilities that now defined her life. As her husband, I watched this development with a mix of emotions. On the one hand, I was happy to see her reignite a part of her personality that had been subdued by adult life. On the other, there was a growing concern. The college friend, with her impending nuptials, represented a world my wife had left behind. A world of unbridled partying and risks that seemed incompatible with the life we had built together. Our shared understanding as a couple was tested during this period. We had always been candid about our pasts, but this reconnection brought a new dynamic to our relationship. The agreement was clear and had been set early in our marriage. Certain aspects of her past, including the intimate nature of her friendship with this woman, would remain in the past, especially given the depth of their previous escapades. Yet, as the engagement party drew closer, I couldn't shake off a sense of foreboding. There was an unspoken fear that the reemergence of her college friend might awaken in my wife a longing for a life she had willingly left behind. It was a test of trust and understanding, a delicate balance between respecting her autonomy and expressing my concerns. The day was like any other until I came home and stumbled upon what seemed like a discarded postcard next to my bag. It was only out of a flicker of curiosity that I decided to inspect it. Wrapped in plastic, it appeared innocuous at first, but as I read through, I realized it was an invitation to a bachelor party happening that very night at a men's strip club in the city. The discovery sent a jolt through me, a mix of surprise and apprehension. This invitation was not just any piece of paper. It symbolized a world that my wife and I had agreed she would no longer be a part of. It represented a breach of the trust and understanding that we had built over the years. The immediate surge of emotions was overwhelming confusion, betrayal, and a need to understand why. Driven by a concoction of concern and disbelief, I made an impulsive decision to go to the strip club. I had to see for myself to understand what was happening. It wasn't just about trust. It was about protecting our relationship from the ghosts of her past that seemed to be resurfacing. Upon arriving at the club, I was out of my element, a stranger in a world of nighttime revelry and abandon. My sole focus was to find my wife, to get answers. I began asking around, inquiring about the wives and brides in attendance. It felt surreal, almost as if I was a character in a movie, trying to piece together a puzzle in a setting that was completely alien to me. Finally, a breakthrough came when I learned from one of the women that my wife had left the party with 2 men. The information struck me like a physical blow. I was torn between denial and the dawning realization that something was amiss. Desperation took over as I pressed for more details, eventually learning the name of the hotel where they had gone. The journey to the hotel was a blur, a tumult of emotions raging within me. I called my wife's phone repeatedly, only to be met with the cold silence of unanswered calls. Upon reaching the hotel, I was confronted with yet another obstacle. The receptionist refused to divulge any information about the room. It was in this state of mounting despair and frustration that I saw her emerge from the elevator, accompanied by a man. The sight was like a dagger to my heart. Her expression upon seeing me was a mix of shock and guilt. The raw emotion on her face, the tears streaming uncontrollably, spoke volumes. The confrontation that unfolded in the hotel lobby was charged with an intensity that neither of us had ever experienced in our relationship. There, in a public space, our private anguish was laid bare. My wife's face, a canvas of shock and regret, mirrored my own feelings of betrayal and disbelief. The air was thick with unspoken accusations and desperate explanations. I asked her the question that was burning inside me: what happened? Her response was a mix of silence and stuttered half-answers. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words seemed to fail her. The enormity of the situation seemed to have rendered her speechless, her usual eloquence lost in the tide of her emotions. In a moment of overwhelming frustration, I pressed for details, but she remained unable to articulate a response. Instead, she grasped my hand, a silent plea for understanding, and we began to walk away from the chaos of the hotel. As we exited, her confession came in a flood of tears and broken sentences. She admitted to making a terrible mistake by attending the party and asked if we could go home to talk. The drive home was a journey through a landscape of confusion and hurt. She sat beside me, a shell of the person I thought I knew, lost in her own world of regret. At home, the floodgates opened, and she confessed everything. The night had started as a simple reunion, a harmless celebration, but it had spiraled into something she hadn't anticipated. Her words painted a picture of a night filled with old habits and dangerous flirtations. She insisted that nothing physical had happened, but the emotional betrayal was already too deep. She revealed that the connection with the man from the hotel was innocent, a misguided attempt to relive her youth. But the damage was done. Following the night of the revelation, my wife moved to her brother's house, a physical manifestation of the chasm that had formed between us. This separation was more than just geographical. It represented the profound emotional distance that had emerged from the revelations of that fateful night. The home we had built together, once a haven of love and comfort, now stood as a stark reminder of the trust that had been shattered. During this time, my wife's attempts to reach out and reconcile were met with my unwavering resolve. The hurt and betrayal I felt were too deep, the broken trust too significant to simply sweep under the rug. Each phone call, each message from her, was a piercing reminder of the chasm that now lay between us. The narrative in this chapter also explores the struggle to maintain a semblance of normalcy in the midst of this personal turmoil. The routines of work and daily life continued, but beneath the surface, there was a constant battle with a gamut of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief, and a lingering sense of loss. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock gradually gave way to a painful acceptance. The realization that our marriage, once a source of strength and happiness, had been irrevocably altered was a bitter pill to swallow. The chapter reflects on the complexities of healing from such a deep emotional wound, the process of coming to terms with the end of a relationship, and the daunting task of envisioning a life that diverges from the shared path once envisioned with a partner. As the dust settled on the tumultuous events that had unfolded, I found myself grappling with a new reality. The space that once echoed with shared laughter and love was now a silent witness to the chasm between us. My wife, now living at her brother's, was physically distant, yet her presence was felt in every corner of our once shared home. During these days, I oscillated between moments of profound sadness and flashes of anger. The ringing phone flashing her name was a constant reminder of the life we had and the uncertainty that now lay ahead. Each call from her was like reopening a wound that had barely begun to heal. She wanted to talk, to explain, to find a way back to us, but I was lost in a sea of betrayal and hurt. The house felt emptier than ever. I would often find myself sitting in our living room, staring at the spaces she once occupied. Memories of our time together would play in my mind like a bittersweet movie. The joyous moments now tinged with the pain of our current situation. Her favorite mug still sat on the shelf, her books still lined our bookcase, and her scent still lingered, making it impossible to forget the bond we once shared. Friends and family, who had celebrated our union, now treaded cautiously around the subject of our separation. Their well-intentioned words of comfort often felt like salt in an open wound. They too were struggling to make sense of how our seemingly perfect relationship had reached this point of disrepair. The solitude of the nights was the hardest. The quietness of the house amplified the turmoil within me. I would often find myself reaching for my phone, tempted to call her, to hear her voice, to pretend even for a moment that things were back to normal. But the harsh reality of her betrayal would always pull me back, a stark reminder of the trust that had been broken. In quieter moments, I pondered over the remnants of our relationship. Could the fissures be mended? Was there a path back to what we had? Or had the foundation of our marriage been irrevocably damaged? These questions haunted my thoughts, offering no easy answers, only a reflection of the complexity of human emotions and relationships. As the weeks turned into months, the initial shock and turmoil of our separation gave way to a period of deep introspection and reflection. This chapter chronicles my journey through this transformative phase, a time when the raw emotions began to settle, and the stark reality of our situation became clearer. In the solitude of our once shared home, I found myself confronting a myriad of emotions and unanswered questions. The silence of the empty rooms provided a backdrop for introspection, leading me to ponder the intricacies of love, trust, and the delicate nature of human relationships. I realized that while love forms the foundation of a marriage, it is trust that acts as its pillars, and once these pillars are shaken, the entire structure becomes vulnerable. During this time, I began to accept the painful truth that our marriage, as I had known it, was over. The realization was not immediate but rather a gradual awakening. It was a process marked by moments of sadness for what was lost, intertwined with a growing sense of clarity about the future. I reflected on the vows we had taken and the promises we had made. The breach of these vows by my wife was not just a momentary lapse. It was a decision that reflected deeper issues within our relationship and within herself. It became evident that the issues were not just about the incident at the hotel, but rather about the choices and actions leading up to that night. This period also brought a newfound understanding of self-love and respect. I recognized that forgiving my wife was essential for my healing, but forgiveness did not necessarily mean reconciliation. It meant releasing the anger and bitterness, not for her sake, but for my own peace of mind. As I journeyed through this labyrinth of emotions, I also grappled with the concept of personal freedom within a marriage. I realized that while love binds two people together, it should not restrict their individual growth and happiness. This realization brought a sense of liberation, a release from the chains of a relationship that, in hindsight, may have been more confining than nurturing. Madison, the younger sister, was everything my wife wasn't. Single, carefree, and relentlessly pursuing her dream career, she had a magnetic presence that drew people to her. Her success on TikTok and her burgeoning social media presence only amplified the differences between the sisters. Despite these glaring contrasts, my wife never openly admitted to feeling overshadowed by Madison. However, her actions and occasional offhand comments revealed a different story. The chapter delves into the subtle, often unspoken dynamics that governed their relationship. There were times when my wife's demeanor would change noticeably after interactions with Madison. It was as if each encounter with her sister served as a reminder of her own unfulfilled aspirations and the choices she had made. The narrative also explores how these feelings of inadequacy and jealousy subtly influenced our marriage. My wife's inner turmoil began to manifest in our daily life, casting a shadow over our relationship. She would oscillate between expressing her love for Madison and harboring a silent resentment towards her sister's accomplishments and freedom. This undercurrent of envy reached a tipping point when Madison announced her engagement. The news, while a happy occasion on the surface, stirred a whirlpool of emotions within my wife. The engagement symbolized everything Madison had, and my wife felt she lacked the excitement of new love, the thrill of an unwritten future, and the spotlight that inevitably came with it. As Madison's wedding preparations began, my wife found herself increasingly drawn into the vortex of her sister's life. She started to obsessively follow Madison's social media updates, her every post becoming a subject of scrutiny and comparison. This obsession was a stark contrast to the image she presented to the world, one of a supportive sister and a happily married woman. In the wake of the engagement, Madison, radiant and brimming with excitement, became the center of attention within the family and their social circle. Her happiness was palpable, infectious even, but it cast a shadow on my wife. Each wedding plan discussed, each bridal magazine left on our coffee table, seemed to deepen my wife's sense of inadequacy and longing. As her husband, I watched this internal struggle unfold. My wife oscillated between putting on a brave face and succumbing to her inner turmoil. In public, she was the supportive sister, sharing in Madison's joy, but in private, she revealed her true feelings. Her casual remarks about Madison's life choices often hid a deeper sentiment of resentment and unfulfilled desires. This period was marked by a subtle yet noticeable change in my wife's behavior. She became more withdrawn, often lost in thought, and increasingly fixated on Madison's social media presence. Her phone, once just a device for casual browsing, turned into a portal through which she vicariously lived out the excitement and freedom she perceived in Madison's life. The chapter also explores the dynamics of our marriage during this time. The joy and contentment that once defined our relationship began to wane, replaced by a sense of restlessness and dissatisfaction. Conversations about Madison and her wedding plans would often lead to awkward silences or forced enthusiasm from my wife. As Madison's wedding day approached, the tension reached a boiling point. A dinner invitation to meet Madison's fiancé and celebrate their engagement served as the backdrop for a pivotal moment in our story. The fiancé, charming and successful, seemed the perfect match for Madison, further highlighting the differences between the sisters' lives. After the dinner, the drive home was a silent journey, filled with unspoken thoughts and emotions. My wife's quiet demeanor was a stark contrast to her usual self. It was clear that seeing Madison's happiness and the love she shared with her fiancé had deeply affected her. The initial signs of trouble were subtle, yet in hindsight, unmistakably ominous. My wife's behavior began to change in ways that were hard to ignore. She became increasingly distant, often lost in her thoughts, and her interactions with me grew more perfunctory. There were unexplained absences and late-night phone calls that she would hurriedly dismiss as inconsequential. But the truth was far from it. The unraveling began in earnest when I noticed a pattern in her behavior. She started to leave the house at odd hours, offering vague explanations about needing to clear her head or meet a friend. It was during one of these unexplained outings that the truth began to emerge. A chance discovery of a timestamp on our home security system revealed that her exits and returns were more frequent than she had let on. Confronted with this evidence, my wife initially tried to brush it off as harmless outings. But the persistence of my inquiries and the undeniable inconsistencies in her story led to the painful truth. She had been meeting Madison's fiancé in secret, an act that went beyond the boundaries of mere friendship or sisterly concern. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. It was not just the act of betrayal that wounded me deeply, but the realization that our marriage had become a facade, masking a myriad of unspoken issues and resentments. My wife's actions were a reflection of her inner turmoil, her struggle with feelings of inadequacy, and her longing for a life that she felt had eluded her. In the days following the revelation, the finality of our situation became increasingly apparent. The home we shared, once filled with dreams and plans for the future, now felt like an empty shell, a stark reminder of what had been lost. The decision to divorce, though heart-wrenching, seemed the only path forward. It was a decision born not out of anger, but out of a profound sense of disillusionment and the need to preserve my own sense of self. As we navigated the painful process of separation, life continued in its unpredictable rhythm. In an ironic twist of fate, my relationship with Madison, born out of shared betrayal and heartache, began to evolve. Our interactions, initially centered around mutual support and understanding, slowly transformed into something deeper. In each other we found solace, a kindred spirit who understood the depths of the pain we were experiencing. This chapter is not just a story of endings, but also one of new beginnings. My burgeoning relationship with Madison was unexpected, yet it unfolded with a natural ease. We were two people who had been deeply hurt, finding comfort and understanding in each other's company. Our bond, strengthened by shared experiences and empathy, gradually blossomed into a romance. Meanwhile, my wife's path took a different turn. The realization that her actions had not only destroyed our marriage, but also her sister's engagement led her to a place of deep remorse and confusion. Her attempts to reach out to me, to seek forgiveness, were met with my firm resolve to move forward. The finality of our divorce marked an end to a chapter in both our lives. A chapter that had once been filled with love, but ended in pain and betrayal. The conclusion of this narrative is not just about the end of a marriage, or the beginning of a new relationship. It's about the profound transformations that occur within individuals when faced with life's unpredictability. My journey through the wreckage of a broken marriage to finding unexpected love with Madison taught me invaluable lessons about the complexity of human emotions, the fragility of trust, and the resilience of the human spirit. One of the key realizations that emerged from this journey is the understanding that love, in all its beauty and power, is not always enough to sustain a relationship. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild, and the scars of betrayal can run deeper than anticipated. My experience with my wife underscored the importance of honesty, communication, and mutual respect in a relationship. It highlighted the dangers of unaddressed emotions and the destructive potential of envy and dissatisfaction. The evolution of my relationship with Madison also brought to light the capacity for healing and redemption. It showed that even in the aftermath of pain and loss, there can be new beginnings and opportunities for growth. Our connection, born from shared experiences of betrayal, blossomed into a source of strength and happiness, a reminder that life can take unexpected turns, leading to new paths and horizons. As for my ex-wife, her journey was a testament to the consequences of one's actions and the difficult road to self-discovery and redemption. Her actions, driven by a complex interplay of emotions and unfulfilled desires, led to profound consequences that altered the course of multiple lives. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of allowing envy and dissatisfaction to dictate. Welcome to another Reddit relationship advice video. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and consider subscribing so that I may continue to bring you more Reddit relationship videos. Now, let's get into today's Reddit relationship video. Today's story is called, I Caught My Wife of 9 Years Cheating Behind Walmart. I can't believe I am writing about this, but yep, it's true. I caught my wife of 9 years cheating on me behind Walmart. I had to deal with my wife and a guy I did not know walking hand in hand out of an exit in the back of Walmart. I wish I was kidding. My wife has been staying out until 4 a.m. for the past 3 months or so every single day. She was claiming she was trying to get more overtime. She's younger than me, only by 2 years, but she looks much younger than her age. You can imagine that I was very upset when this happened, though now I am completely fine with it because she is on her way out permanently. I try to tell people about my wife cheating and they just don't believe me, or they offer some BS advice like just give her some space. No one really understands what happens behind closed doors in relationships these days. People just really don't give a crap. It all started when one day my wife said she was coming home from her shift at Walmart. She worked as an assistant manager. Her shift was supposed to end at 7 p.m., but by midnight she wasn't home. I was calling her and texting but no response. So I decided to take a trip to go see if everything was okay. It's about a 20-minute drive or so. This is a 24-hour Walmart, so it wasn't closed. As I pull up to Walmart, I see her car in the parking lot. As I pull into the parking lot, I look at her car, but it looks like no one is in the vehicle. So I parked my car and go inside. I go to her department, but I don't see her. I really don't see anyone around. Everyone is scattered. A couple people that work with her acknowledge me and wave. I wave back. I then proceed to the back of Walmart. I figured during her shift she had to go back there for something. So I walk toward the back of Walmart and go to the break room. Still no sign of my wife. I go to another spot where they unload the trucks. No wife there either. As I am walking back toward the front entrance, I see her leaving through one of the exits at the side of Walmart. She has a man with her. She's holding hands with him and they're walking toward his car in the parking lot. My heart is racing, but I had to calm down. I don't know why I did it, but I pulled out my phone to start recording. I didn't say a word. I kept my distance. I wanted to see where they were going. They walked to his white SUV. They got in and drove out into the parking lot. He stopped at my wife's vehicle. She got out to get something out of her car. As soon as they left, I ran to my car. I was parked a little far and followed them. The first place they stopped at was a gas station. They both went inside and came back out and kept driving. After the stop at the gas station, I lost them for like 10 minutes or so because traffic blocked me from getting close to where he turned. I got lucky this time. It took me about 15 more minutes to catch up with them again. He then pulled into a hotel parking lot. It's an Econo-Lodge hotel. He pulls into one of the parking spots that is near the hotel lobby. They get out and they walk into the lobby. As I am following them, I was thinking, how long does it take to rent a room? How much time is left on her shift? Well, she was supposed to get off at 7 p.m. At least that's what she told me. And what the hell is he going to do with my wife the whole night? I was freaking out. I followed them close enough so that if they walked anywhere else that I could follow them still. She was talking to him as they walked toward the room. The sign for the hotel says check in at 3 p.m. and check out at 11 a.m. The clock strikes 1:30 a.m. and no one is coming or going from their rooms. There's maybe about 5 people in the lobby itself and all of them are sitting around watching TV. She opens the door and I see that they are both still dressed. She closes the door behind them. I froze at that moment. Should I run in and knock on the door? But I didn't. You know what I did? I sent her a picture and video recording via text of them holding hands, and them holding hands walking into the hotel lobby. After that, I got in my car and drove home, wishing that this had never happened. My wife finally made it home and started asking all these questions. Why did I follow her? I told her, you told me you got off at 7 p.m., but you know what? We don't need to discuss anything. I am filing for divorce. She was in shock right after I said that. She then asked, can we talk? I said, no, there is nothing to talk about. I caught you cheating on me and I have proof of it. You just need to leave. She then says, I don't have anywhere to go. I threw my hands up and said, that's not my problem. If you want to stay here, I will change the locks and lock you out. You can come back in a few days after you find a place. Meanwhile, I am going to sleep because I have been up all night dealing with this. We both go our separate ways. She goes into the guest bedroom, closes the door behind her. I go to our bedroom to get some rest. I get up at about 4 p.m., walk out to the living room and notice the door to the guest bedroom is open. I walk up and peek in, she's gone. I then walk back to my bedroom and notice that most of her clothes are gone. I look out the window of our apartment and her car is gone. I am thinking to myself, she must have come in while I was sleeping. At that moment, I proceeded to call a couple of lawyers to see about divorce procedures here in Virginia. I was going to file for divorce today. Called one lawyer. He kind of gave me some bad news. He said that we had to have lived apart from each other for at least 1 year for a no-fault divorce. He then asked, have I been apart from her for at least a year? I said no. He said I could still file for divorce, but it will be a long process and could get expensive. I asked the attorney, what about a separation agreement? He then tells me the state doesn't have separation agreement laws per se. The only option is no-fault divorce or fault. At this point, after talking to the attorney, the only option I really had was to file for divorce. However, the wife was not home to sign for service of process. So I had no choice but to file in court to have her served. A few minutes later, my wife called and asked, can she come back home? I said, you can, but I am filing for divorce still. My mind hasn't changed. She then tells me she has nowhere to go. At that point, I didn't care, but I didn't have the resources to file for divorce yet. I then tell her you can have the guest bedroom until this is all sorted out. A few weeks go by and I go to my attorney's office and file for the divorce. I then call my wife and tell her that I have filed for the divorce. She asked if we are going to work on fixing things. I told her that wasn't an option anymore. After everything that has been done, no forgiveness or giving another chance would be given. You betrayed me and I just can't deal with the fact you cheated right in front of my face. I will not be able to get that image out of my head for a long time. And I don't know why you would do that because we were married and you took vows to be loyal to me. I wanted to fix everything, but after this it was just too much for me. She then started crying and apologizing, saying that she could not live without me in her life. I told her at this point she can't have us back. You killed any chance for that with this loser you cheated on me with. She then starts to yell at me saying, what am I supposed to do? I said, did he open your eyes and promise you a better life? Well, you can now pursue that so-called better life. I would rather be alone than spend time with you after what you did. I told her you have the guest bedroom to lay your head until you find a place of your own. She then says I can't find a place. I then tell her you have your parents or the guy you cheated on me with, or save your money so you can get a place of your own. She then goes on about the guy she cheated with, saying I don't talk to him anymore. She then started crying hysterically, asking me why am I doing this to her? She never thought I was going to do anything like this. I said, listen, you did this to yourself by cheating on me. This is the consequence. You made your bed, now you can lay in it. The phone call ends with us yelling at each other. I get home after my visit with the attorney. My wife's car is in one of our parking spots. I come in and notice her sitting on the couch on the phone talking to someone. She then hangs up and looks at me and says, can we talk? I said, what? We just got through yelling at each other. What's there to talk about? The divorce is in the works and we both will be free soon enough. She then asked, could we try marriage counseling? I looked at her and said, no, I don't need counseling. You might need it. I tell her you cheated and no marriage counselor will make that go away. I told her to stop talking to me as I wasn't in the mood to talk to her. She was officially past tense in my book. Even though the divorce wasn't final, I was done, mentally checked out. She starts crying and goes to the guest bedroom. I meanwhile go to my bedroom and put my work bag on the bed. I come back out to the couch to gather my thoughts. I am still heartbroken over this, but the good thing is I can move on with my life. I don't have any kids with this woman or any commingled debts. I was almost going to surprise her with the anniversary gift to the Bahamas, but glad I don't have to spend money for that. I am trying to figure out what I did for her to throw away 9 years of marriage for a roll in the hay for a loser. This guy still lives with her parents. Amazing. This divorce can't happen fast enough. I just want to move on with my life. Thank you for watching and listening to the video. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and consider subscribing so that I may continue to bring you more Reddit. I always thought I knew my wife better than anyone else. That's what made the anonymous tip I received one rainy Tuesday morning hit me like a ton of bricks. Your wife is having an affair, it read, plain and simple. No name, no proof, just a sentence that started an avalanche in my life. First I laughed it off. Ridiculous, right? We were happy, or so I thought. But as days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was the little things, her sudden late nights at work, the way she guarded her phone like it held state secrets, and how her laughter, once so familiar, now sounded forced. So, I did what any self-respecting man with a sliver of doubt would do. I decided to follow her. Call it a breach of trust, but that trust was already hanging by a thread. I waited in my car outside her office, heart pounding, hoping I was wrong. But I wasn't. She didn't head straight home as usual. Instead, she drove to this upscale restaurant downtown, the kind we saved for anniversaries. There, under the dim romantic lights, she met him. Mr. Tall, dark and handsome, laughing at something she said, touching her hand across the table. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the image of them together burning behind my eyes. Who was this guy? Why was he with my wife? Questions swirled in my mind like a relentless storm. The next day, fueled by a mix of anger and curiosity, I dug into Mr. Mystery's background. It wasn't hard to find him, given the unique watch he wore, a collector's item. Turns out he wasn't Mr. Perfect after all. His past was a checkerboard of shady deals and questionable choices. A real piece of work. But I needed more than just a gut feeling and a sketchy past. I needed proof. So I did something I never imagined I'd do. I bought a tracking device, the kind you'd see in spy movies, and discreetly placed it under her car. I know it sounds extreme, but by then, nothing was too extreme to uncover the truth. And so it began, the unraveling of a life I thought I knew. A journey down a rabbit hole that would change everything. Little did I know this was just the beginning. There's this thing about the truth, it's relentless. It gnaws at you, refusing to be ignored. That's what happened to me the night I overheard her phone call. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop. I was just passing by her study when I heard his name, and then, "I love you too." Those 4 words, uttered in a whisper, hit me like a freight train. Confrontation was inevitable. I waited, simmering in a mix of rage and disbelief, until she hung up. Then I burst in, demanding answers. Her reaction? Denial. She brushed it off, claiming it was just a work call. But the panic in her eyes told a different story. I couldn't let it go. This wasn't just some misunderstanding, it was my life falling apart. So, I did what any desperate man would do. I hired a private investigator. It felt like a betrayal, hiring someone to spy on my wife, but what choice did I have? I needed to know the truth, no matter how ugly. While the pie did his thing, I started digging into the guy's life myself. The internet is a goldmine if you know where to look. I found out about his business dealings, his friends, even where he liked to hang out. The more I learned, the more I despised him. He wasn't just some random guy, he was a predator, preying on married women. Then came the day the pie called me. His voice was somber as he said, "I've got something you need to see." We met at a dingy diner, the kind where no one cares about your business. He slid an envelope across the table, and my hands trembled as I opened it. Photos. My wife and him, not just talking but intimate. It was like a punch to the gut. Seeing those images, there was no more room for doubt. She was having an affair, and my world, the one I had built with her, crumbled into dust. I sat there in that diner staring at those pictures, feeling a cocktail of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal. I thought I knew her. I thought our love was solid. But in those photos I saw a different story. A story of lies and deceit. This chapter of my life was supposed to be about love and partnership, but all it turned out to be was a tale of betrayal. The truth, no matter how ugly, has a way of demanding to be heard. That's what led me to her family's doorstep, those damning photos in hand. It was time everyone knew the real face of the woman I called my wife. Their reactions? A mix of shock, disbelief, and anger. Her parents, who'd always treated me like a son, looked like I'd physically struck them. I watched as her mother's eyes filled with tears and her father's face turned to stone. They confronted her, demanding an explanation. But she, with a defiance that shocked me, denied everything, even as the evidence lay bare before them. But that wasn't the end of it. As I dug deeper into her lover's life, I uncovered more than just a trail of broken hearts. This guy was neck deep in illegal activities, the kind that could land him in serious trouble. A plan began to form in my mind, a way to make him pay for the havoc he'd wrought in my life. So, under the veil of anonymity, I tipped off the police. I gave them everything: names, dates, places. It felt good, playing the invisible hand of justice. And when they arrested him, the news exploded like a bombshell. Headlines screamed about the scandal, dragging his name and hers through the mud. The arrest sent ripples through our small town. People gossiped, speculated, and took sides. But as the dust settled, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a simple affair. It was a story of deception, crime, and a fall from grace. Sitting there, watching the story unfold on the evening news, a bitter satisfaction settled over me. The man who'd stolen my wife's heart was now behind bars, and she, once the queen of her social circle, was now its pariah. The irony wasn't lost on me. The secrets they thought were hidden in the shadows were now laid bare for all to see. This chapter of my life, which had started with love and trust, had morphed into something out of a crime novel. I'd set out to uncover the truth, but in doing so, I'd unleashed a storm that swept away the life I once knew. Divorce papers. Never thought I'd be the one signing them, but there I was, pen in hand, ready to end the chapter of my life that had turned into a nightmare. Infidelity was the charge, and the evidence was overwhelming. It was a move I never wanted to make, but sometimes life forces your hand. The moment she received the papers, her demeanor changed. The woman who was once so defiant now came to me, tears in her eyes, begging for another chance. But the well of forgiveness had dried up. Too much had happened, too many lies. I turned her away, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, more of her betrayals came to light. It was like peeling back layers of deceit, each one more shocking than the last. I sat there in the courtroom, listening to the litany of her indiscretions, feeling a mixture of sadness and vindication. The person I had loved was a stranger to me now. When the gavel came down, it was in my favor. The settlement granted me most of our assets. It wasn't about the money, though. It was about starting anew on my terms. The house we had shared, the car we had chosen together, they were now mine alone. It was a bittersweet victory. Her fall from grace was swift and total. The friends who had once flocked around her now turned their backs. Invitations dried up, whispers followed her in the streets. She had played a dangerous game and lost everything: her marriage, her reputation, her social standing. Meanwhile, my business started to thrive like never before. The community rallied around me, offering support in ways I never expected. Old clients returned, new ones came knocking. It was as if the whole town wanted to lift me from the ruins of my personal life. As I sat in my office looking at the thriving business I had built, a sense of accomplishment filled me. The road had been rough, the journey painful, but here I was standing strong. I had lost a wife but gained a community, lost a partner but rediscovered myself. This chapter of my life, marked by betrayal and heartache, was closing. But as one chapter ends, another begins. And this new chapter was mine to write, on a clean slate with hope as my compass. Life's funny. Just when you think you've hit rock bottom, it hands you a shovel to dig a bit deeper. That's what happened to her. The scandal that rocked our lives didn't just leave emotional scars. It left her grappling with the real-world consequences of her actions. Jobs? She was now toxic. Employers shied away as if she had the plague. It was a harsh reality check for a woman who once had it all. Meanwhile, there I was, standing amidst the wreckage of our shared past, ready to rebuild. I embraced self-improvement like a man parched in a desert embraces water. Fitness, books, seminars, you name it, I was into it. I was sculpting a new me, someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded. Then one day she showed up at my doorstep, a shadow of the confident woman she once was. Her eyes, once so full of life, now held a desperate plea. She wanted to reconcile, to go back to the way things were. But you can't unscramble eggs. I closed the door on her and that chapter of my life, not out of spite, but because some things can't be fixed. Her plight worsened. With no job and dwindling savings, she was a sinking ship. I heard through the grapevine about her struggles, about missed rent and unpaid bills. Part of me felt sorry for her, but it was a bet of her own making. As for me, life was an adventure waiting to be embraced. I discovered hobbies I never knew I'd enjoy. Photography, hiking, even salsa dancing. Each new activity was a thread in the vibrant tapestry of my new life. I was no longer the man who had been cheated on. I was the man who rose from the ashes of betrayal. This journey, from the depths of despair to the heights of self-discovery, was not one I had planned. But as I stood there, camera in hand, capturing the sunset, I realized something profound. Life doesn't always give you what you want, but sometimes it gives you what you need. And what I needed was this: a fresh start, a new perspective, and the realization that no matter how hard it hits you, you can always hit back harder. Just when I thought I'd left the past behind, it came knocking at my door, uninvited and unwelcome. It started with him, her lover, the cause of all the turmoil. Fresh out of jail with nowhere to turn, he sought her out. Imagine that. The very man who helped shatter our lives, now back for more. I heard about their confrontation through the grapevine. He was angry, accusing her of abandoning him, of not being there when the going got tough. The irony of his accusations wasn't lost on me. There they were, two people who once conspired in secrecy, now at each other's throats. I could have intervened, played the hero. But why? This was their mess, their battle. I had my own life to live, far removed from the drama that once consumed me. So, I stayed out of it, a spectator from a distance. But it didn't end there. He started harassing her for money, relentless in his pursuit. She who once lived a life of comfort, now found herself dodging threats and pleas for cash. Her fall from grace had turned into a free fall. Then, in a twist I never saw coming, her friends came to me. They asked me to step in to help her out of the mess she was in. They said it was my duty, that the history we shared obligated me to act. But they didn't understand. That history was exactly why I couldn't help. I was sympathetic, sure, no one deserves to be harassed, to live in fear. But this was a chapter one had closed, a part of my life I had moved on from. I couldn't be her savior, not after everything that had happened. So I declined as gently as I could. I told them that her path was no longer mine to tread. It was a decision that wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For me to truly move forward, I had to let go completely, even if it meant turning a deaf ear to her plight. This chapter of my life, once filled with love and then betrayal, was now a distant memory. A story with chapters one no longer wished to read. I had new stories to write, new chapters to fill with adventures of my own making. And as I closed the door on her friends, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead us to true freedom. Life's a journey of crossroads, and at each one we make a choice. My choice was clear. Move forward, leave the past behind. So when her friends pleaded with me to help her, I stood my ground. She had to face the consequences of her actions, just as I had to face the aftermath of her betrayal. It was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Meanwhile, she got tangled in a legal battle with him, her former lover. It was like watching two scorpions in a bottle, each trying to sting the other harder. Their affair had spiraled into a pit of lawsuits and accusations, a far cry from their secret rendezvous. As for me, I embraced the freedom that my new life offered. I traveled, something I had always wanted to do but never found the time for. From the bustling streets of Tokyo to the serene beaches of Bali, each destination was a balm to my soul. I met new people, experienced different cultures, and for the first time in a long time I felt alive. Back home, the news eventually reached me. She lost her legal battle. Not only was her reputation in tatters, but she was also now drowning in legal debts. It was a harsh outcome, but one that was perhaps inevitable. Her choices had led her to this point, and there was no one else to blame. As I stood on a cliff overlooking the azure waters of the Mediterranean, I realized how far I'd come. The pain that had once consumed me was now just a distant echo, a reminder of a past life. I had found peace, not by holding on to grudges, but by letting go and moving on. This chapter of my life, once darkened by betrayal, was now illuminated by new experiences and the promise of a fresh start. And as I looked out at the horizon, I knew that the best was yet to come. In the game of life, the rumor mill is the wild card, dealing hands unexpected and often undeserved. As for her, the whispers began to swirl, painting her not just as a cheat, but as an accomplice in his illegal activities. True or not, the rumors clung to her like shadows, darkening her already tarnished image. It was a wildfire that consumed whatever little sympathy the town had left for her. While her world continued to crumble, I found solace in reconnecting with old friends. There's something about shared history that brings comfort, like a familiar blanket on a cold night. We reminisced, laughed, and I remembered the man I was before all the chaos. Those bonds, once stretched thin by neglect, grew strong again, anchoring me in a community that had always been my home. But the real twist came when she was shunned by her own family. The very people who had stood by her, hoping for a sliver of innocence, finally turned their backs. It was a sad sight, watching her lose the last of her support system, but it was a bet of her own making. Amidst this backdrop of fallen grace, I found myself stepping back into the dating world. It was tentative at first, like testing the waters after a storm. Then I met her, someone who shared my values, my love for life, and my appetite for adventure. She was a breath of fresh air, a beacon of hope in a journey I once thought was destined for solitude. But just as I was turning a new page, my ex-wife, driven by jealousy, attempted to discredit my new relationship. It was a desperate move, one that reeked of bitterness. She spread lies, trying to sow doubts among our friends. But her words fell on deaf ears. The community knew me, knew my story, and they rallied around me stronger than ever. As I stood by my new partner hand in hand, facing the petty attempts to pull us apart, I realized how far I'd come. I was no longer the broken man, nursing his wounds in solitude. I was part of something bigger, a relationship built on trust and respect, and a community that stood by me through thick and thin. This chapter of my life, once marred by betrayal, was now a tale of redemption and new beginnings. It was a testament to the power of resilience and the strength that comes from knowing you're not alone. Life has a way of coming full circle, often in the most unexpected ways. As my ex-wife's desperate attempts to smear my new relationship fell flat, I felt a profound sense of vindication. The community, which had once seen us as the perfect couple, now saw the truth. They rallied around me, their support a solid wall against her crumbling facade of lies. Meanwhile, her spiral into despair deepened. Financial instability, a direct consequence of her actions, led her to the brink of eviction. It was a stark contrast to the life she once led, a life she had gambled away. I heard about her struggles, the whispers of sympathy and schadenfreude intertwined, but I remained detached. Her path was no longer mine to ponder. In the midst of this, a new chapter in my life began. With the ocean as witness and the sunset painting the sky, I proposed to my partner. Her yes was a beacon of hope, a promise of a future filled with love and honesty. It was a moment of unadulterated joy, a stark contrast to the pain of the past. But my ex-wife, ever the actress, attempted one final act of redemption, a public apology made with tearful eyes and quivering lips. Yet, it backfired spectacularly. People saw through the performance, recognizing it for the desperate ploy it was. It only served to further alienate her, her words dissolving into the sea of her past deceits. As for us, the news of our engagement spread through the town like a warm breeze. Congratulations poured in, each one a testament to the community's support and affection. It was heartwarming to see how much goodwill surrounded us, a stark contrast to the isolation and condemnation that now enveloped my ex-wife. This chapter of my life, once overshadowed by betrayal and heartache, was now glowing with the promise of a new beginning. It was a testament to the belief that even after the darkest nights, the sun will rise. And as I stood there, hand in hand with my fiancé, I knew that this sunrise was just the beginning of a beautiful journey ahead. They say every story has its end, but sometimes the end is just a new beginning. As I embarked on this new chapter of my life, news about my ex-wife reached me, painting a picture of a life unraveling at the seams. Her isolation had taken a toll on her mental health, a sad consequence of the bridges she had burned. It was a sobering reminder of how the choices we make can lead us down paths we never intended to tread. But amidst the echoes of her downfall, my own life blossomed into something beautiful. Our wedding was a celebration of love and new beginnings, a joyous ceremony surrounded by friends, family, and a community that had stood by me through the storm. The laughter, the tears of joy, and the love that filled the air were a balm to the wounds of past. However, even in moments of joy, shadows from the past can linger. In an act of desperation, my ex-wife attempted to crash our wedding. It was a scene straight out of a dramatic movie, but this was real life, and the pain in her eyes was palpable. Yet, she was gently turned away, a final closing of the chapter we once shared. The honeymoon that followed was a dream. We traveled to places we'd only seen in pictures, creating memories that would last a lifetime. Each day was a celebration, not just of our love, but of the resilience of the human spirit. We explored, laughed, and loved, fully embracing the happiness we had found in each other. As I sat there watching the sunset on a perfect honeymoon evening, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache, they had all led to this moment of utter contentment. I realized that adversity hadn't just tested me, it had taught me. It taught me about strength, about forgiveness, and about the power of moving forward. My ex-wife, once a central figure in my life, had become a cautionary tale. A tale of how cheating and betrayal can lead to a life of loneliness and regret. It was a harsh truth, but a truth nonetheless. This story, my story, was one of triumph over adversity, of finding love after loss, and of the unyielding support of those who stood by me. As I looked forward to the chapters yet to be written, I knew that the lessons I had learned would guide me through whatever life had in store. And in that moment, I realized that the truest form of success wasn't just overcoming adversity, but using it as a stepping stone to build a life even